Hi, I'm David Blanchette with NAI Horizon. Welcome to Industrial, the New Retail, a panel discussion on the industrial sector in Tucson, Arizona. This program is produced by Southern Arizona chapter of CCIM. Before we get to our panelists, I'd like to make a couple announcements. And I'd like to thank our sponsors right now. I thought we were going to have our sponsor program.
There we go.
Oh, there we go.
It's a little slow, sorry.
That's all right. No problem, Tiffany. There's our gold sponsors. They're the ones that help us out with the bulk of a lot of the programs that we have. And then there's our silver sponsors as well. We can't do what we do and put on these programs and give you the kind of support and the knowledge without these great sponsors. So I want to thank them. Also want to talk about a couple upcoming announcements for webinars. On Tuesday, August 18th, we're going to have an office panel webinar. I'm sure it's going to be great. Lots of good panelists on that. Also on the Deals and Drinks, a virtual deal making event. That's going to be September the 2nd. And that's where you're going to be able to put different deals and have a drink with everybody on this webinar. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'd like to introduce now our panelists. Great group of guys. Rob Glazer, he's an SIOR. He's a CCIM. He's a principal with Cushman Wakefield Picor, and he's the top industrial properties broker here in Tucson. Tim Healy, he's vice president. He's an industrial specialist with CBRE. Another top guy in our market, Max Fisher. He's an industrial properties guy with Cushman Wakefield Picor. I've known Max just for a couple of years, but the guy is definitely on fire. I think he's has done more deals in the last year than almost any of the other brokers. So I really am happy to have this group of guys together today to talk about our industrial sector. What we've done is we put together some pre-selected questions that our panelists provided us for our webinar today. And we're going to be picking from that list of questions. And at the end, we'll also have questions and answers. So send your questions on the Q&A line during the webinar and tell us which panelist the question is for. And we'll direct it to them and we'll do our best to answer them at the final part of our webinar. Rob, Tim and Max, I'd like you to start, each of you, by briefly saying a few words about your business and how it's doing and the changes that you're seeing in the market. We'll begin with Rob and then Tim and then Max. So Rob, please give us a little update on what's going on with your business.
Well, hello everyone. Good to be with you. I wish I could see everyone. Frankly, from about mid-March, I started working from home. I became a WFA to work from home. I've had fairly good experience in doing this many summers, so it was, fairly easy to get into a rhythm. Just some things that kind of stand out, my communication with clients, my assistant Tara, my communication with the PINC, which is the Picor Industrial Group, and partners has probably been more critical than ever. Our industrial group meets once a week, and just to go over the market, what we're seeing, what we're doing. And the partners at Picor too are meeting once a week just to kind of discuss our, company business and protocols and what we're doing, what our clients are doing. March and April, I saw inquiries down by about 80%. May through present, general improvement by 40 to 50%, but still down off of, kind of the times pre-COVID. Activity has been generally a little bit more tentative. We've seen a lot shorter lease terms, like 6 months to 2 years. And, those are some of the changes I've experienced.
Great. Tim, can we hear from you?
I did what Rob said. It's funny because in March, it seemed like our communication lines really opened up because everybody wanted to know what everybody else was thinking. So that was actually a benefit, I guess.
Yeah.
As far as what I'm working on, I would say a lot of renewal activity for me. I think 2 reasons. I think landlords want help with price discovery and just kind of knowing, how to deal with tenants during the pandemic. I think on the tenant side, I think there was pre-COVID, a lot of tenants that were looking at expanding or, decided to stay in place. So I would say that as a difference maker, that was probably where I saw the biggest increase in business and just kind of difference in how things are being handled.
Very good. Thank you. Max, what's going on with you?
So yeah, I would say about April, it felt like the sky was falling and everything was falling apart. Got maybe 2 or 3 deals done in April, but then May, I felt like it kind of unleashed and hit about 20 deals in May. So that was the busiest month I've had of my career. So I do feel like it's bouncing back now. It's a bit more steady now. There's uncertainty out in the market. There's different pockets that are affected differently. I've seen a little bit of a hit in the downtown market, but most of those industrial businesses are serving your downtown shops or your downtown restaurants. But I mean, overall, it's been steady. Continue to raise rates. I think vacancy will stay flat as one business goes out, another one pops up. So I don't think we're going to have much of a drop or an uptick in industrial overall by the end of the year. And I think part of that is I've seen a lot of migration from businesses from California, New York, a couple from Oregon. So I would say it's decent.
Great. That's really good.
Hey, Dave, I
Yeah.
have a question for
Sure.
Rob and Max, and I'll give my perspective first. But as far as pricing goes, rental rates and concessions and things like that, kind of what I'm feeling and seeing is that pricing is holding, and most landlords, one of the changes I've noticed during this pandemic is I think there's a disconnect between buyers and sellers and tenants and landlords, with the tenants and the buyers feeling like there should be some blood in the water. My impression is there is no blood. Landlords are actually trying to get, pressure and trying to get increases on the rent. I have noticed in some situations where, the landlords have given in, but by give in, it's like they've kept the rent the same. Maybe they've thrown a month or 2 of free rent in to get the deal over. But what are you guys seeing as far as pricing goes?
Tim, I'm going to just a brief comment because I think it's one of the questions later on in our webinar here. So I would generally agree with you. Some tenant expectations are that there should be more available, more concessions, lower rates. And I don't think the market has moved very far at all from where it's been.
Great.
I think Tim's summary was spot on. You have these tenants and these buyers out here who are thinking there's blood in the water, and there's really not. And it's tough to convey that to them because they think the economy is falling, and there's really not a whole lot of concessions out there, and rates are going up.
Good to know. The industrial sector within the commercial real estate market has seen strong gains in recent years, while the retail sector has relatively been challenged. Clarion Partners, a real estate management company, calls this recent performance divergence between industrial and retail the most stunning development in the 42-year history of the open and diversified core equity index. Clarion Partners says, looking forward, the COVID-19 crisis is likely to accelerate several of the existing themes in real estate, including the continued rise of industrial and the fall of selected retail, mainly malls and big box heavy power centers. Panelists, starting with Tim, then Max and Rob, is this trend occurring in the Tucson market, and will we see the big boxes become the last mile distribution centers?
So I think that's been a topic of discussion. It's an interesting idea. I can't say that I've experienced it all in Tucson yet, and I don't have any anecdotal evidence in our market. I will say that on calls that I've been in other markets, core markets, especially Los Angeles, there's been a move, or there's been activity as far as obsolete retail and office properties being purchased by industrial developers, redeveloped into industrial, but the land values in those transactions is $60 to $70 a square foot in some of those core markets. So the land value, it's totally different than our market as far as that goes. And another interesting comment I heard on a call, we do these, as Rob mentioned earlier, we're all kind of in the communication lines have opened, and so CB does these calls with our different regions. And there was a broker on from Los Angeles that said, or somewhere in the Los Angeles area, Southern California, indicated that he's getting a lot of calls on his industrial land listings from office and retail developers wanting to build industrial products. So I find that pretty interesting.
Interesting, yes. Matt?
Rob? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Rob.
I would say that the e-commerce platform is accelerating in the Tucson market. For the most part, the most significant tenant activity in the Tucson market right now is related to this trend. There's probably close to 750,000 square feet requirements related to e-commerce in the Tucson market at this time.
Could you repeat that again, please?
The whole thing?
No,
Yeah.
just what the demand is right now for that.
I think there's just a significant acceleration of the e-commerce platform that we're seeing in Tucson right now. And there's probably as much as 750,000 square feet requirements related to that e-commerce platform that are in the market right now.
Wow. That's exciting.
I would venture to say, if we were to take a survey of those that are all on the call, not only the speakers, but everyone on the call, I would imagine that we are all doing more shopping online through e-commerce, through Amazon, through whoever, than certainly any in-store.
Right.
Outside of maybe shopping, and even, with groceries, I'm guessing a significant percentage is doing delivery.
Right. Max, what do you think?
Yeah, so I noticed that there was a big uptick in terms of interest back in like April or May, and that interest kind of faded away a little bit. And from what I've gathered, I think that those companies, they absolutely do want to make those types of last mile distribution leases, but they're so busy with their deals in the larger markets like Phoenix or Los Angeles. So I think it'll get to that point. It's just a matter of time and energy on the decision makers' part.
Got it. Rob, our pre-COVID-19 industrial vacancy rate was at a historical low. Have you seen the vacancy rate change, and what type of spaces have changed the most?
You know, I'll give you an example. Two of my larger clients recently shared their occupancy trends with me.
Mm-hmm.
East Group Properties, which owns 3.8 million square feet in Arizona, has gone from a pre-COVID occupancy of 94.5% to 98% occupancy as of a few days ago.
Wow.
Now, East Group's tenants are just usually national credit distribution type tenants.
Mhm.
So that's their tenant mix. Crescent Equity has 10 million square feet, and basically their occupancies have stayed the same. They've lost, as Max had mentioned earlier, they've lost some tenants, but their activity, you know, for small business has actually been pretty good. And they tend to cater to, you know, the smaller tenant. Their average tenant size is probably 2,000 square feet. So overall, I haven't seen significant changes in occupancy one way or the other. Although in Oro Valley, there are two larger in that area that I know are moving and consolidating.
I see. Interesting. Tim, we have a limited inventory of functional industrial space available in the market. What is the current demand for industrial space, and what type of users are in the market?
So I think, you know, we kind of touched on the e-commerce already. Obviously, that's a huge, and, you know, Amazon is just acquiring space left and right at an unbelievable rate. And I think Walmart and, you know, Home Depot and some others are executing e-commerce business plans that include taking down warehouse space. One interesting stat that I've heard is for every $1 billion in sales in e-commerce, you need 1 million square feet of warehouse. So as e-commerce, is their share of those retail sales increases, obviously it'll be great for us in the industrial market, maybe not so great for the retail market. But when I think nationally and what everybody talks about in the news, I think of e-commerce, I think of life sciences, I think of data centers, I think of cold storage, and those seem to be sort of the hot topics that we talk about today when we talk about industrial. And I think, you know, some of those will, you know, we're going to see our fair share of e-commerce, I think mostly to support our local demand here and maybe demand in other cities, smaller cities outside of Tucson, like Sierra Vista, Benson, et cetera. And I think cold storage is more of the same. I think we'll see some cold storage get built here to support, if everybody decides to make those investments to sort of realign supply chains, we should see some of that cold storage here locally. I think data centers, I think we're kind of missing the boat on that. I think there's a lot of activity in other markets related to data centers, and a lot of that is to support e-commerce. But I think our electricity, what I hear is our electricity rates are a little bit high here for that to make sense. Maybe solar could be the answer for that, but we're missing out on a lot of that activity. You see it up in Phoenix and some other markets. And as far as life sciences goes, we have a nice cohort here with Ventana Medical, the U of A vet school, I think will add to that. But again, when you compare it to places like San Diego, relatively speaking, we're not seeing maybe as much as we should.
Right.
I think some good local specific Tucson stories are mining and optics. I think mining has continued because of its great history here. I think of technologies developed out at the U of A. I'm kind of addressing your comment about what industrial users are in the market. I think we'll continue to see those mining companies expand here. And when we talk about mining companies in Tucson, historically it's been the actual mines, but that business and that activity includes software development, fabrication, and stuff like that you wouldn't even think of. So we're seeing, a good amount of that activity. As far as optics go, optics is similar to mining in that, it's really grown here due to the University of Arizona and their programs there. And when I think of, you mentioned functionally obsolete space, I think of a lot of these, especially the first four that we talked about that are kind of, expanding nationally. I think of those as all they'll need new construction.
Right.
E-commerce users today just can't live within functionally obsolete buildings, and the other three really require very specific types of buildings. As far as optics and mining, traditionally they've leased existing space here in our market, but you see with companies like Caterpillar and Hexagon, new construction has been a means to an end there, so that could be good. Hopefully, historically Tucson misses these development cycles. Hopefully with the expansion of industrial, we'll see some new product come into our market.
Yeah, very good. Max, how many prospects do you talk to on a monthly basis that want to expand their business into the Tucson market, and they can't do it just because of the lack of inventory? How many people you talk to like that maybe go to another city, or they just don't come here at all, or just stay where they are?
It happens, but I think we got to drop a couple points in vacancy rate to really feel that. Where I do see it happen is mostly with tenants that need yard or buyers. So, I guess we'll get to this in a little bit, this spec building, but it mostly has to do with yard.
Right. For service companies and construction companies, that type of users. Rob, have your landlords had to make any concessions or restructure their tenants' rent rate? And what type of rent? I think you talked about this a little bit in terms of rent, collection trends and other things like that. Anything special that your clients and landlords have to do?
Well, we are tracking that very closely, Dave. I'll give you a sense, and it is a little bit of a tale of two stories. So in the East Group portfolio, collections for Tucson and Phoenix are at 100%. So they've not had to make any concessions and nor have any delinquency. Now, their tenants tend to be larger national distribution type tenants, like I mentioned, in Tucson, Sara Lee, Southern Wine, LKQ, Chamberlain, and they just haven't seen any deterioration in collection there. Now, Preston, who has a lot of smaller business, they are standing at about 5% delinquency, which, over 10 million square feet is still significant, and they're small business type tenants. So they have been, through March, April, maybe even May, kind of backstopped by the PPP loans. There are over 11,000 PPP loans in Arizona. So they're watching it very carefully. I know another local landlord in Tucson that has 4 or 5 business parks, smaller tenants. They are affected by as much as 20% of their tenants are delinquent, and they've had to work out concessions. So, I'm concerned that in coming months, without that backstop, and I know it's being discussed now on backstopping, small business again. But I expect it'll get a little bit worse on delinquency before it stabilizes, I think.
Good. Hey, Tim, you're marketing 1 acre industrial lots at a project called Airport Run. Know it very well. It's been around quite a few years, and it's located at Palo Verde Road and Elvira. With what Max said about the yards and the buildings, what's happening with that land? What kind of activity are you getting on it from some people that want to, be there, or they want to build and then lease it out?
So, so actually we are in escrow right now with a client of Alan Moore's. So we did that. That's a COVID deal. But I noticed an uptick in activity on those lots, at least from a call perspective, pre-COVID, the end of last year. And those calls and that interest level has continued through COVID. And I think that in part is based on, what everybody's been saying on this call, that, we just have a lack of functional space in Tucson, and people are out looking, and whether that be for lease or for purchase. And that seems like an area of opportunity here in Tucson. If you have a building for sale, I think that's functional, you should be able to sell it pretty quickly. But I think the activity on land in general has gone up in the market. I'd be curious to hear what Rob and Max have to say about that, but that's my impression based on my land listings.
Rob, can you comment on that at all?
On land values,
Yeah.
there's not been a significant amount of new development in Tucson for some time.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of construction pre-COVID was extremely high. We had done a study to build a 20,000 square foot building with 20% office. Ran about $123 a square foot. Of course, now with financing being so attractive, that lowers, with someone putting down, like 10%, maybe an SBA type loan, those monthly payments are pretty reasonable. But we still haven't seen, broad land selling. So pricing's been hard. It seems like, $3 a square foot and everywhere but the Northwest is kind of the norm for a normal type sale. But, there've been plenty of sales on under $3 a square foot for land. So, but not that much activity.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Max, you're marketing an industrial incubator development project on North Freeway Industrial Loop that's over by Miracle Mile and I-10. Is that out of the ground yet, or do you have construction going on that? And what's the update on that project, which is kind of interesting because we have very little spec incubator space going on right now.
Yeah, so we have all the walls up. Hit a little bit of a snag with TEP, but I think that should be taken care of within the next few weeks. So
Wow.
I think we could deliver that space within the next few months here. 2 bays of 4,200 square feet or one of 8,400. I've had strong activity on it. The one objection is when can you deliver it? So, and I kind of see that same trend when it comes to existing space, that Preston builds out spec once they get it back from the tenant. It's tough to lease, but once the walls are up and the walls are painted, flooring's in, then, it'll lease up within a few weeks. So I'm hoping it turns out that way, and I think it will, but we'll see.
Well, that's good news to hear for people that want to go ahead and just build, and they will come, right?
Exactly.
Excellent. Rob, your landlords and developers, how are they planning to, they've got to be looking ahead a few years to see what's going to happen here in Tucson. Are they making plans to build certain types of properties to meet that need?
East Group has been eyeing new construction in Tucson for the last couple of years, fairly seriously, but they've been very tentative. They've been reluctant to pull the trigger. They feel the depth of the Tucson market is their main concern. and Phoenix has been extremely strong for them. So I wouldn't be surprised, but they are still tentative. There is a new developer in the market, bought 9.5 acres on Tucson Boulevard, just north of Valencia. They're going to develop a 75,000 square foot building, starting construction in January of 2021. They seem very committed to that project. And of course, you know, Preston is very pleased with their well Tucson has done for them. They own 14 business parks and they'd love to add additional business parks. So that's generally what I'm saying.
Good. Tim, how about you?
Not broad development, but
Yeah.
some.
How about you, Tim? What do you see out there in terms of the developers or people that are trying to maybe meet the demand that's here in Tucson?
Well, that's been the story of Tucson, you know, over the last, boy, I don't know, maybe Rob could answer how far this goes back, but we tend to sort of skip through these development cycles. You know, Rob's client East Group has been, I would say, our most active developer in the market. And, you know, we just aren't seeing, we don't get the interest from, you know, some of the other large developers. Obviously, Prologis being the biggest in the world, they don't have any projects in Tucson.
Yeah.
So, you know, I guess Rob kind of hit the nail on the head. There's this demand issue that we seem to be facing. And, you know, it's funny because when corporate America shows up in Tucson, they wonder why they can't find the kind of space they find in other markets and wherever. And you'd think we would have seen more development. But my thinking, and, you know, I like to be optimistic here, is that based on where industrial is going and with the e-commerce explosion and the acceleration of that, I'd like to think we would see some spec construction here in, you know, the next couple of years. So I just would find it hard to believe that that wouldn't occur. I think Max brought up a good point. You know, we need some pressure on rents, but I think the issue is demand. We really need demand to show up, and I feel like that's coming.
Right. Well, this is for everybody. If you could build a type of industrial building today, what would you build to meet the current market?
Want me to?
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
So Rob brought up East Group. I think two developers that have done a really good job in our market. I think East Group being one. I think Harsh building a building that they just completed in December is another good example. If it were my money, I look at two types of products. And there is an example of this that East Group built on South Country Club, where they did both of these products side by side. 5,000 to 7,000 square foot bays with dock and grade loading, and 20,000 to 30,000 square foot bays, again with dock and some grade loading, and some truck storage for the bigger bay building, truck trailer storage for the bigger bay building. And I think the smaller bay stuff, 24-foot clear, with the larger bay stuff, 32-foot clear.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my take on it.
Thanks. Rob?
You know, I think what Tim just mentioned is almost what you have to start at that point. You know, it's, you know, in the question, it's not only, you know, what the current demand is, but then if you finish that question, say, and obtain rents that justify the risk and the effort,
Right.
You know, ideally, you would love to build more incubator, small business, you know, type of space in the Northwest. But it probably cost you $120 a square foot. You probably need a 95 to $1 a square foot triple net rents. Rents have gone up considerably. Occupancy in that area is close to 97%. But it's just really hard to make a project like that pencil. So, you know, I think you look at, you know, 8,000 square foot bays, 5,000 to 7,000 square foot bays, grade level loading, truck courts, reasonable parking, at a minimum 24-foot clear. trailer storage is becoming more important. And I'll tell you, all eyes are on that harsh project, that harsh spec project right now. You know, if they're successful and absorb that project, I think pretty reasonably quickly, then I think others will jump in. But it will have to be bigger bay buildings to justify the, you know, cost and the rent.
I see. Max, what about you? What do you see? What do you want to see built out there?
I think if you're talking distribution down by the airport, I think the bullseye development is northwest, small to mid-sized bays, a little bit of yard. And I want to get into why that is the bullseye development. We have most of those tenants up in the northwest market. They're serving the housing market, which we all know is doing really well. There's all kinds of building going on in Marana and Oro Valley, which relates to our migration pattern. People are tired of the taxes and regulations in California, and Northeast and Northwest, so they're coming out here. So the tenants in that Northwest market, they're your HVAC guys, your plumbers, your electricians, your supply houses, all of those types of businesses. And even if our market starts to go down, I really don't see that getting hit very hard. Definitely not as hard as the other markets, because I think we're going to continue to see this migration pattern, and we need a lot more housing.
Excellent. You guys are great. You've really got a handle on what's happening and given us an insight in terms of how COVID-19 has affected the market. Doesn't seem like it's affected it much at all. It thinks that the economy seems to be pretty strong here in Tucson. Let's see if we can take some questions and answers from the people of the audience. Gary, do you have that?
Yeah, I do. And Rob, you might have mentioned, touched base on this a little bit, but this is a question to all the panelists. How is the harsh spec building leasing going?
Why don't we let Tim, because he's CBRE has it listed. Tim, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I don't have it listed. Jesse Bloom in our office does. And so, I don't want to talk too much out of turn here, but my understanding is that that building, at least, I would say at least half of it is going to be leased soon, and maybe the whole thing. They've got, several deals in the queue from what I understand for Jesse.
That's good news.
Okay, and I don't know if this is going to be really location, but what price will incubator buildings lease for?
So up in the Northwest, we, Rob and I represent a few projects up there. We just hit one lease in the Grant and I-10 market, and that was about $1 a foot modified gross, a little less, somewhere in the 90s. And now we have Prince and I-10 and Ruthroff and I-10 in the low 90s. So, and that's modified gross. So significantly higher up in Northwest, in our Palo Verde market, as long as it's, functional product, you're going to be in the high 60s, low 70s.
Modified gross.
Correct.
Is that 90 cents the highest that they've achieved on those properties?
We've been able to get it with some frequency now over the last couple months, wouldn't you say, Max?
Yeah. I mean, and we're talking, we're filled. One tenant moves out, we throw it out at 90 cents or somewhere around there, and it's filled within a month. So, and we're just steadily increasing those rates.
I mean, is that, yes, my question is that benchmark that you guys are setting there, is that historically the highest number they've gotten on that property?
That's the highest rents that we've ever gotten in for those projects. I would say at the height of 2007, we were probably more in the range of about 80, 82.
Okay, we have a few more questions coming in. Rob, can you tell us about the 50,000 square foot building at Tucson and Valencia? Was that the old airport parking lot?
It's a 75,000 square foot building, and it was the old Tucson parking lot. They bought the land for $250 a square foot. It's in the opportunity zone. It's an experienced developer out of California who is selling some apartments and will take advantage of the opportunity zone. And I think he's actually going to build with cash and is, I would say, strongly committed to the project.
Is that multi-tenant, Rob?
It is multi-tenant. The bay sizes are about 18,000 square feet. Clear height still to be determined, but 24 to 30 feet. ESFR sprinkled, some additional trailer storage, and a good project.
Sounds like a good product.
Yeah, I think we have seen a real uptick in developers poking around Tucson. I got a call yesterday from an opportunity zone related fund. And then last week, a client of mine who's closing on a distribution company up in Phoenix is looking at developing down here, partly a multi-tenant building, but it's kind of a cool model because he would have his business in part of the building and then lease out the rest spec. So I think it's moving in that way.
Kind of a quasi owner user investment property.
Right. Yeah, for distribution.
I see. Tim?
Okay, maybe the panel can address this. This is thanks for mentioning on Oro Valley. Our council just approved a primary employee incentive program and code amendments to commercial zones that will enable wholesale manufacturing and R&D in commercial zones. Comments?
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Gary.
Yeah, I can't hear you, Gar.
Okay, let me try that one more time. Thanks for mention on Oro Valley. Our council just approved a primary employee incentive program and code amendments to our commercial zones that will enable wholesale manufacturing and R&D in commercial zones.
It's great. I mean, I think Oro Valley is being, and I imagine that question or statement is from JJ, I would assume.
Yes.
So I think that's great. I mean, I think they're doing what they need to do. I mean, I think this is really interesting to me from a government standpoint. When you look at the real estate playing field right now, you're the city of Tucson, Oro Valley, Marana, and so I got to give credit to Oro Valley. You've got to start thinking about what's going to happen to some of these retail projects. I mean, Dave Blanchette brought that question up early on that, the malls and, they're all struggling. And, I imagine, that our mall ownership here in Tucson is, the Tucson Mall and Park Place Mall is obviously a very savvy, sophisticated ownership. So they'll figure it out. But I think the government needs to come along and offer support and give flexibility toward this new reality that we're going to face, which, is the growth of e-commerce at the expense of brick and mortar retail. And how do they deal with that? And what are they going to allow within those historically retail properties?
Any more questions, Gary?
No, that's it for the questions.
What you guys, last thoughts, guys? What are you thinking? Anything that you want to kind of just to wrap this up?
I would just say thanks, Gary and Dave, for putting this on, and Tiffany, thank you. And I don't see anybody else's faces, but it's really good to see Rob and Max. And the more stuff like this we do, the better.
It's funny, Tim, that you mentioned that. During these very strange times, we don't see each other very often. And one thing I've always truly appreciated about the Tucson commercial real estate market is it's a fairly small group. And, you know, I interact with the same industrial brokers all the time for years and years and years. And I just I'm very grateful really to have other professionals in what I do that that I enjoy working with so much. So, you know, a little sentimental that we haven't seen each other for a while, but very fortunate to have such a good group.
Thanks, Rob. Max, anything on your mind there?
I think Tucson is positioned well post-COVID as a migration point from better and stronger public and private partnerships, like with JJ and other municipalities, and the mining market as well. So I think we're positioned well, and appreciate you guys having me on this today.
Thank you, guys. You're really great group, and really appreciate your input. And we'll, I got a couple of things here that I want to talk about here. We're going to do, I just thank you again for being with us today. Also, thank our sponsors. If you want to be a sponsor, it's a great thing to do to get your name out there and to also just become part of the CCIM community, you might say. And also, if you're thinking about becoming a member, you know, we can, you know, we are actively recruiting different members for the chapter. Even though we don't have a luncheon right now, we do have a lot of communication with our members. So if you are interested in a sponsorship or, you know, being a chapter member, Tiffany's email address is on our website, and you can also call me too, for membership or for sponsorship. Again, we're going to announce that August 18th, we're going to have an office panel webinar, and we're going to have the deals and drinks, a virtual marketing event, September the 7th. So thank you, everybody. It was really good.
Dave, let me just add a few. We're getting a few more questions in.
Oh,
And,
you did? Okay.
most of them are, thank you, great job. Panel did a great job. So I would like to, there's a lot more comments coming in. Great job for everyone. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for everybody that attended. Good to be able to provide the information that we did today. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Take care, everyone.
See ya.
See you guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay.